Let's talk to Dolapo Oni, who's here from EcoBank Research. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming. And this conversation about whether we thought that May 25 would bring an end to the petrol crisis, whether from that day onward we would have petrol. That was last week, Monday, and all going to be El Dorado. Here we are, 1 week after, and we're back to the barricades, as it were.
Yeah, and it's part of what we tried to mention in the report. That number one, there are several other issues that also needed to be resolved. I mean, to be a little bit more specific, like right now, what we're seeing is more of a logistic issue at the moment because, and I did mention this, I think on a call I had with you last week as well, that during the second quarter, the marketers imported only 1.8 million tons of petroleum products. Typically, Nigeria imports 3 million, 3.4 at times. So we're at a stage where the depots are actually running out. And the reason they did that was really because they were not sure whether the new regime was going to sustain the subsidy culture. They didn't want to be exposed. They didn't want to be owing so much to the banks. And then the government had decided they were not going to pay anymore. So they tried to protect themselves by reducing their imports, and they shrank it to 1.8. And now we're at a situation where various depots around the country have actually run out. I was still speaking with a petroleum marketer this morning, and he said that they couldn't lift anymore from Sapele or other parts of the country. So their trucks are in Lagos at the moment, joining the queue that they've met at Apapa as well. And even at Apapa as well, the situation is also not improved because various trucks from all over the country are there trying to lift not just gasoline now, diesel, kerosene, LPG, everything at the same time.
Aviation fuel.
Exactly, creating so much scarcity.
What precisely was achieved last week, Monday, May 25th?
You see, that's really the difficulty here because we were not privy to the agreement that has
Between
actually been
the government
signed. Exactly.
and the Jonathan's administration.
We don't really know to what extent or what promises were actually made to make the marketers actually decide to call off the strike. But what we know is that they had that meeting and they decided to call off the strike. But you know, one thing we were certain about is that a committee was set up which was going to investigate all the subsidy claims. And that committee was handed over to the new government to continue and ensure that the marketers that actually had rightful claims were paid. So that we know. But the question is, will all the marketers get paid? There are claims. For instance, even the finance minister actually said it herself that some of the claims are actually fraudulent. And, you know, give or take, that may be true because there are various ways that some of the marketers have gotten involved in the industry in the past. So that's something that is yet to be seen.
From a business point of view, where are we at the moment in terms of how do we translate these oil, fuel prices, subsidy conundrum? From a business perspective, exactly. You owing, there are fraudulent claims alleged by the government. Now, the products are not available. So there is no strike as we speak, no official strike. However, the oil marketers, the importers, the retailers, looks like everybody is holding the rest of the country hostage. Yes. There are reports of hoarding, as it were, because no one is sure what happens. But these will be done at a different price. If there's a food regulation, would they sell this hoarded products at what price?
Yes, you see, even before we get to that, the fact is, the reason why we're still at a bit of a standstill right now is because new money has to enter the system. Government has to pay somebody. Because, you see, these marketers actually, some of them owe banks, and they need to pay the banks so that they can actually get new loans to import more products into the country.
Were we sure whether the bankers were involved in the May 25 meeting? Well, sure.
To what extent? Not really.
Perhaps they should have.
Perhaps they should have, because that's really where this is in a bit of a stall at the moment. There's a logistics issue, quite all right, which is also hindering the distribution of the product at the moment. Clearly, right now, Apapa is the main port where everybody can actually lift products from. Ibafon has some field; they can do maybe about 10 to 13 million liters per day. But Apapa is where everybody can be assured that they will get products. So everybody's heading to Apapa. You know, that's one side. The other side is the fact that the bankers actually need to also provide loans, and they need to be repaid, and then they can release new monies. But, you know, still talking about the business side again, there's an impact, which is what we pointed out to in our report. Nigeria saw GDP fall to about 4% last in Q1, and we could see that continuing to Q2, because don't forget, this strike has now lasted, or this scarcity, let's put it scarcity, has actually lasted somewhere into 8 weeks now. So there will be an impact on Q2 GDP figures as well. There will be impact on inflation because transport prices have gone up, food prices have actually gone up as well. People have had to pay, even in filling stations, you've had to pay like 120 naira per liter for fuel.
Which I did this morning.
Exactly.
Anyway, reports that some unscrupulous Smite-Alex sold a 30-liter jerry can of water to a motorist on, what do you call it? Somewhere in Lagos. I heard it was in the newsroom yesterday, and the gentleman was reportedly sitting on the sidewalk and crying. The coroner, because he hurriedly bought it perhaps sometime in the night under the cover of darkness, and the folks are gone with 11,000, which he paid for 30 liters of petrol. But more seriously speaking, this looks like we haven't really resolved this issue. No. However, who do we talk to get this resolved?
I think it starts with the government. The key issue is, I think there needs to be a clear direction on how do we want to resolve this issue. There needs to be a clear directive or policy direction from the government on how they want to approach the issue. I think
what should we address first? Because it looks like we've got one problem, and then you got layers on top of it as we go right now. So we keep digging in, right, to get to the bottom of it. Exactly. However, as soon as you dig in, the top start falling through.
Yes. And I think the first issue is the subsidy issue. Number one, payments owed need to be paid. Payments owed need to be paid so that marketers can bring in products. And then the next issue is we need to understand clearly is how do we move forward without subsidies? How do we move forward without subsidies? Clearly, Nigerians have paid up to 500 naira per liter already. So I can assure you that if, at the moment, current subsidy on gasoline is 46 naira, roughly about 47 naira per liter.
So if you add that,
that gives you roughly about 135, 136 naira per liter.
So that looks like an effective pricing for it, isn't it?
Exactly, which already a lot of people are paying. I mean, if you're driving outside Lagos, you likely pay 150 naira per liter, even at a pump. You know, so that's something people are comfortable with. So to some extent, the government may actually have a leeway to actually use this period to push out subsidies. At the same time, also then move on to strengthen the development of modular refineries. I watched yesterday, and Rotimi Agbaje mentioned it, that modular refineries can come up in about 18, 20 months. That's something that if we develop, then we have some local refining capacity to meet our needs.
We'll talk about those very deep end of these energy crisis in the second part of the program, of the discussion, which comes after the break. But for now, if we look at where we are and how bad things are getting, do you think that, and you've alluded to that very briefly, perhaps we'll expand it a little bit further, what we had penultimate May 25 was, well, folks were on strike and nobody knew, telecoms, bankers, everybody were feeling it. Now there are no strikes and this is going on. So that looks like, for the month of June, PMI fell in May. Yes. And that came out yesterday from FBN Capital. And it looks like for the month of June, we're going to head in the same direction. How bad do you think second quarter would most likely be? As severe as first quarter?
I think it could be, because really we're now at the tail end where we're seeing the depots running out. And of course I alluded to it again, because tankers that typically would have gone to Mosimi to go and load, or typically gone to Sapele to go and load, have to come to Apapa right now or to Ibafon to go and load their products, adding to the logistic problem, because it's not really a very big expressway in Apapa. So right now, you can't get tankers. So the log jam. There's a log jam currently in Apapa. That's one. The other side is this. On the business side of things, it means that there isn't enough diesel supply, there isn't enough gasoline supply to run generators, especially for manufacturing companies who now depend almost entirely on diesel generators, because even the power sector, the power supply, perhaps it has improved in the last 1 or 2 days, but not really over the last few weeks. It's been still poor. So if that sustains, that's something that could ensure that businesses don't fully recover yet, because the effect will linger. They'll still have to depend on generators. They'll still have to run
Is anyone importing petrol at the moment?
The funny thing is we actually have a couple of vessels parked offshore.
Apapa here in Lagos?
Yes, Apapa here in Lagos. Okay. And I'm constantly speaking to marketers, and I mean, I spoke to one last week, and he was like, I have 2 vessels waiting offshore to offload, but I haven't been paid. And if I dump those vessels, they can't go out, because I need them to drop and go out. And I need to get loans, facilities for my bank.
But he's paying for keeping the vessels on the water?
But he's paying demurrage already. So
and it's in dollars.
Either way, somebody's paying at the same time, but the new products won't come in. And I also alluded to the fact that even in Europe, one of the major refining hubs where we lift most of our products from, there's currently a glut of gasoline that ordinarily should have headed to West Africa.
Hamburg, in Europe?
In Rotterdam.
In Rotterdam.
That traditionally would have headed to West Africa, mostly to Nigeria. But it's all there lying in cargoes, and nobody has made any orders. So It's something that we could see still go on in June, and we'll see the impacts on businesses because, again, you know, it instantly feeds into transport costs, feeds into, and those costs are very sticky downwards. They tend not to come down very easily when they do go up.